The vast observation deck of Stellaris Academy offered a breathtaking view of the planetary rings that encircled the space station. Alara Cade stood alone by the transparent aluminum panels, her reflection barely visible against the cosmic backdrop. 16 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a regulation neat ponytail, she appeared unremarkable among the diverse student body, which was precisely how she preferred it. 3 weeks into her first semester, and she had mastered the art of blending in. Not too smart, not too athletic, not too anything that might draw attention. Just another human transfer student trying to navigate the complex social hierarchy of interplanetary education. What her classmates didn't know, what she had carefully concealed, was that Alara was the daughter of Commander Sarah Cade, one of the most decorated Marines in the Interstellar Alliance. What they couldn't see was the 15 years of informal military training that had shaped her reflexes, her situational awareness, and her capacity for strategic thinking. Last call for orientation tour. Variable gravity hallways and spiral staircases can be disorienting for new students, announced a mechanized voice over the Academy's communication system. Alara checked her schedule on her wrist display. She had holographic physics in 20 minutes, enough time to familiarize herself with the Central Hub's architecture. Following the small group gathering near the tour guide, a tall, tentacled Meridian with iridescent skin, she maintained her practiced 3-pace distance from the others. The Academy was designed to accommodate 27 different species, the guide explained, gesturing with 2 of his upper appendages. The variable gravity zones allow comfortable locomotion for all student body types, from the high-gravity draconian students to the low-gravity nebulans. As they moved through corridors that subtly shifted in gravitational pull, Alara made mental notes of exit points, security camera positions, and potential choke points, habits ingrained from childhood. The spiral staircase that connected the Academy's 5 main levels particularly caught her attention. Unlike traditional stairs, these featured gradual gravity reduction on ascent and increase on descent, allowing for efficient vertical travel regardless of a species' mass or strength. The spiral staircase is the heart of our Academy, the guide continued, a marvel of engineering that symbolizes our commitment to unity through diversity. A snicker from behind made Alara's spine stiffen. She didn't turn around, but her peripheral vision caught the movement of 3 students trailing at the back of the group. She recognized them immediately, Jax Terrell and his followers. Jax was a Taurian, humanoid in appearance but with ridged violet skin and enhanced musculature evolved for his species' high-gravity homeworld. As the star athlete of the Academy's Zero-G ball team, he commanded both respect and fear. His companions, Vex, a sharp-featured Proximan with translucent skin that revealed his circulatory system, and Krell, a stocky Uranian with 4 arms and metallic scales, formed the core of what Alara had quickly identified as the Academy's dominant social clique. "Hey, Earth Dirt," Jax whispered, just loud enough for Alara to hear. "Enjoying the tour? Must be overwhelming for a primitive species." Alara said nothing, maintaining her pace and gaze forward. The words were meaningless. She'd heard worse on military bases, but she cataloged the interaction, assessing Jax's motivations and potential threats. The tour concluded at the base of the spiral staircase in the central atrium, a soaring space filled with holographic displays of stellar phenomena and student achievements. "Your next classes should be starting soon," the guide announced. "Remember, the gravity adjusts automatically to your species' registered biometrics, but be mindful of others sharing the space." As the group dispersed, Alara moved toward the staircase, calculating the most efficient path to her next class. She placed her hand on the biometric scanner at the base, which would calibrate the gravity field to human parameters for her ascent. She had barely taken 3 steps when she felt it, a deliberate shove from behind. Powerful enough to disrupt her balance, but subtle enough to appear accidental to any observers. Instinctively, her combat training kicked in. Her body wanted to drop into a defensive stance, pivot, and neutralize the threat. But her mind overrode the impulse. Don't reveal yourself, not yet, not here. Instead, she allowed the momentum to carry her forward, controlling her fall to minimize injury. She tumbled down the few steps she'd climbed, landing at the base with a convincing display of helplessness. Laughter erupted from Jax and his friends. "Gravity control malfunction," Jax announced loudly, his voice dripping with mock concern. "Someone should report it. Humans clearly aren't adapted to interstellar education environments." A small crowd had gathered, most students keeping their distance but watching with that universal mix of relief and fascination that comes from witnessing someone else's misfortune. Alara pushed herself up, ignoring the minor scrape on her palm, the only real injury she'd sustained. She made brief eye contact with Jax, noting the satisfied smirk on his face, before deliberately breaking the gaze as a properly intimidated victim would. "Are you all right?" A soft voice came from her left as a delicate hand offered assistance. Alara looked up to see a Centurion girl with pale blue skin and luminescent eyes that seemed to shift color with her emotions, currently a concerned lavender. Centurions were known for their empathic abilities. "I'm fine," Alara replied, accepting the help more out of social protocol than necessity. "Thank you." "I'm Leah Torin," the girl said. "Don't mind them. Jax targets anyone he perceives as a threat to his status." "I'm not a threat to anyone," Alara responded, the practiced line delivering the exact impression she wanted to convey. Leah's eyes shifted to a skeptical blue-green. "Perhaps not yet, but perception and reality often diverge." The warning chime for next period sounded, and students began hurrying to their classes. Alara nodded politely to Leah before turning back to the staircase. This time, she scanned her hand and ascended without incident, though she could feel Jax's eyes on her back. In the holographic physics classroom, three-dimensional stellar formations floated between rows of students. Professor Astra, a Pleiadian with crystalline features, manipulated the projection with elegant gestures. "Today we continue our exploration of gravitational dynamics in multiple star systems," she announced, as the hologram expanded to fill the center of the room. "Please, activate your personal interfaces." Alara tapped her desk, and a holographic control panel materialized before her. As she worked through the assigned calculations, a portion of her mind remained focused on the incident at the staircase. It wasn't random. Jax had targeted her specifically, testing boundaries, establishing dominance, standard predatory behavior that she'd observed countless times on military bases and in combat scenarios. The question was, why her? She'd been careful to remain unremarkable. After class, Alara headed to the Academy's information hub, a vast digital library where students researched assignments or connected with homeworlds. Finding a private terminal, she pulled up Jax Terrell's Public Academy profile. Torian, 17 standard years, transfer from the Rigel Military Preparatory Academy, captain of the 0G ball team, son of General Kraz Terrell of the Torian Defense Force. The connection clicked into place. General Terrell had been vocally opposed to the recent alliance between Earth and Centauri Prime, a political position that had cost him consideration for the Interstellar Defense Council. Jax's antagonism likely stemmed from inherited prejudice, possibly exacerbated by personal ambition and the competitive nature of military offspring. Understanding the motivation didn't change Alara's approach. She would continue to observe, analyze, and maintain her cover. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. In unfamiliar territory, gather intelligence before engaging. Know your battlefield better than your enemy does. The next 3 weeks established a pattern. Jax and his friends escalated their harassment through calculated incidents. Her personal items disappearing from secured lockers, accidental collisions in the hallways, whispered insults about human inferiority, isolation tactics that discouraged other students from associating with her. Alara documented each incident meticulously in an encrypted journal, identifying patterns and vulnerabilities while maintaining her facade of helpless submission. She noticed that Jax was careful to keep his actions just below the threshold that would trigger official disciplinary measures. He was smart, strategic, which made him more dangerous than a simple bully. Only Leah Torin consistently defied the social pressure, sitting with Alara at mealtimes and partnering with her for class projects. At first, Alara maintained her distance, suspecting a potential trap, but Leah's genuineness eventually earned a measure of trust. "My father is a diplomatic liaison," Leah explained one day, as they worked on a stellar cartography assignment. "He always says understanding comes before judgment. I've never understood why some species insist on establishing hierarchies based on homeworld gravity or technological development timelines." "It's hardwired into most sentient evolution," Alara replied, momentarily forgetting her cover as she slipped into analytical mode. "Resource competition drives the establishment of dominant structures." Leah's eyes shifted to a curious yellow. "That's surprisingly insightful." Alara quickly redirected. "Just something I read in xenosociology orientation materials." The Centurion didn't press further, but Alara made a mental note to be more careful with her observations. The physical education complex occupied an entire section of the Academy's lower level, a series of adaptable training environments that could simulate various gravity conditions, atmospheric compositions, and terrain types. It was the only class where Alara deliberately underperformed, careful to display only average human physical capabilities, despite the urge to test herself against the enhanced abilities of her non-human classmates. After one particularly frustrating session of restraint, she lingered in the training area, watching as the facility's staff reset the equipment for the next class. One staff member, a tall, broad-shouldered human with close-cropped gray hair and the bearing of a career military officer, caught her attention. "Dissatisfied with your performance, Ms. Cade?" he asked, approaching with a knowing expression. Alara immediately straightened her posture, a reflexive response to the authority in his voice. "No, sir. Just observing the equipment calibration." He smiled slightly. "I'm Instructor Morin. I oversee combat training for the senior security track students." He gestured toward a separate training room. "We have some more advanced equipment in there if you're interested in additional practice." Alara hesitated, suspicion warring with curiosity. "I'm not in the security track." "No," Morin agreed. "But I knew your mother at Lunar Base Alpha. Commander Cade mentioned you might be attending Stellaris when I took this position." The revelation sent a jolt of alarm through Alara. Her cover wasn't as complete as she'd thought. Reading her expression, Morin lowered his voice. "Don't worry. Your record shows a standard civilian transfer. Whatever reason you have for keeping your background quiet is your business. But if you ever need a proper training space where you can work at your actual skill level, my facility is available during off hours." He handed her a small access chip. "Biometrically locked to you. The security systems run on a closed network, separate from the main academy grid." Before she could respond, he walked away, leaving Alara with both an opportunity and a complication. That evening, after curfew checks, Alara slipped out of her dormitory. The access chip Morin had given her bypassed the standard security protocols, allowing her to reach the combat training facility undetected. Inside, the space was dimly lit but fully functional, with an array of equipment far more advanced than the standard physical education offerings. "Authorization verified. Alara Cade," announced the facility's AI system. "Training preferences?" Alara considered for a moment. "Hand-to-hand combat sequence? Mixed opponents. Intermediate difficulty." A holographic opponent materialized, a generic humanoid form, programmed with combat movements drawn from various martial traditions. Alara settled into a fighting stance, feeling the familiar focus sharpen her senses as she prepared to engage. For the first time since arriving at the academy, she allowed herself to move at full capacity, no longer constraining her reflexes or holding back her strength. The holographic opponent adapted to her skill level, increasing in difficulty as she dispatched each simulation. An hour later, perspiring but centered, Alara completed the training sequence with a final takedown maneuver. As the hologram dissipated, slow applause echoed from the entrance. Instructor Morin stood watching, arms crossed but expression approving. Intermediate difficulty? That was a significant understatement of your capabilities, Ms. Cade. Alara toweled off, her breathing already regulated. Force of habit. Your mother trained you well, Morin observed. But I notice you're favoring standard marine hand-to-hand techniques, effective against human opponents, but potentially limiting against some of the more exotic physiologies you might encounter here. The observation was accurate and pointed. Alara had been trained to fight human adversaries in Earth-standard conditions. The variable environments and diverse species at Stellaris presented combat challenges she hadn't fully considered. I could show you some adaptations, Morin offered. Techniques specifically developed for interspecies engagement. Might be useful knowledge, even if you never intend to use it. Alara considered the offer carefully. Additional training would be valuable, but accepting help meant trusting Morin with knowledge of her true capabilities. Why would you help me? She asked directly. Morin's expression grew serious. Because I've been watching this academy for 3 years, and I've seen patterns that concern me. The administrative staff is excellent at managing academic matters, but less attentive to the social dynamics between species. Some students exploit that oversight. Like Jax Terrell, Alara stated rather than asked. Among others, Morin nodded. I can't officially intervene without evidence of serious infractions, but I can ensure that potential targets have the tools to protect themselves. Alara made her decision. Show me. For the next several weeks, Alara established a new routine. During daylight hours, she maintained her unremarkable facade, enduring Jax's escalating harassment with apparent resignation. At night, she trained with Morin, learning combat techniques specifically designed for Taurian, Proximan, and Uranian physiologies. Knowledge she hoped would remain theoretical, but prepared to implement if necessary. The turning point came during the mid-semester evaluation period. Academic pressure intensified, and with it, the social tensions throughout the academy. Alara had just completed a particularly challenging xenobiology exam when she returned to her locker to find it forcefully breached, her personal belongings scattered across the corridor floor. As she knelt to gather her things, Jax and his friends approached, forming a semicircle around her. Interesting reading material for a basic-level human, Jax commented, holding up her encrypted personal tablet. Though he couldn't access its contents, the device itself was a restricted model, military grade, and not standard civilian issue. Give it back, Alara said quietly, rising to her feet. Jax's ridged eyebrows raised in mock surprise. It speaks, and with such authority. He turned to his companions. I think our little Earth project is developing some backbone. The tablet, please, Alara repeated, her voice level but firm. Jax stepped closer, using his height advantage to loom over her. What's on it that's so important? Love notes? Diary entries about how scary the big bad aliens are? He made a show of examining the device. Military encryption. Interesting. Playing soldier like your Earther governments? Pretending you belong at the adults' table? Alara felt a familiar combat readiness settling over her, the calm clarity that preceded action. She forced it back, maintaining control. This wasn't the time or place. Last chance, she said simply. Jax laughed, a harsh sound that drew attention from passing students, who slowed to watch the confrontation. Or what? You'll report me? Go ahead, Who do you think they'll believe? The decorated general's son or the pathetic human charity case? With deliberate slowness, Alara extended her hand. The tablet belongs to me. Return it now. Instead, Jax tossed the device to Krell, who caught it with one of his forearms. I think we should see what's so important, the Uranian suggested, his metallic scales reflecting the corridor lights as he attempted to activate the device. Leah Torren's voice cut through the tension. Security drones approaching, East Corridor, she announced, suddenly appearing beside Alara. 30 seconds, maximum. Whether it was true or not, the warning had the desired effect. Krell immediately tossed the tablet back to Alara, who caught it smoothly. This isn't over, Jax promised, his violet features darkening with anger. You can't hide behind security protocols forever. As the group departed, Leah's eyes cycled through shades of concern and relief. There weren't actually any security drones, she admitted. But the Academy systems indicated a routine patrol was scheduled for this sector in the next 10 minutes. So it wasn't entirely untrue. Alara secured her tablet, checking that the encryption remained intact. Thank you. Leah helped gather the rest of the scattered belongings. His behavior is escalating. It might be time to file a formal complaint with administration. That won't be necessary, Alara replied, already formulating alternative approaches. Leah's eyes shifted to a worried gray. Alara, I can sense your determination, but also something else, something that concerns me. What are you planning? Nothing, Alara assured her. Just focusing on academics until the semester ends. That night, instead of heading to the training facility, Alara used her access to review the Academy's security systems. If Jax was escalating, she needed to understand the environment completely. Camera placements, patrol patterns, blind spots, and response protocols. Not to evade them, but to ensure that when the inevitable confrontation occurred, it would happen on terms she could control. The opportunity presented itself sooner than expected. 3 days later, as students gathered in the central atrium during the midday break period, Alara noticed Jax and his group, positioned near the base of the spiral staircase, tracking her movements with undisguised hostility. The incident at the beginning of the semester had been a test, a casual assertion of dominance. What Alara saw in Jax's expression now was something more dangerous. Wounded pride, seeking restoration through public humiliation. He had selected his stage carefully, the central staircase at peak traffic time, with maximum visibility. Alara made a deliberate choice. Instead of avoiding the area, she walked directly toward the staircase, maintaining awareness of Jax's position while appearing absorbed in her tablet display. She placed her hand on the biometric scanner, calibrating the gravity field, and began ascending. She sensed, rather than saw, Jax's approach from behind, registering the subtle shift in air pressure as he moved into position. This time, there was nothing subtle about his intent. With deliberate force, he shoved her forward, clearly intending to send her sprawling up the staircase in front of the assembled student body. Time seemed to slow as Alara's combat training engaged fully. In the split second between the shove and her response, she made her final decision. No more hiding, no more pretending. Instead of tumbling forward, Alara converted the momentum into a controlled roll, absorbing the impact and coming back to her feet 3 steps higher, now facing downward toward her attacker. The move was so smooth, so unexpected, that Jax momentarily froze in confusion. That, Alara said clearly, her voice carrying in the suddenly silent atrium, was your second mistake. Jax recovered quickly, his face contorting with anger. You got lucky, he snarled, advancing up the stairs. Let's see how coordinated you really are. He lunged forward, 400 pounds of Taurian muscle and aggression, to the watching students. What happened next appeared almost too fast to follow. Alara sidestepped the charge with precision timing, using Jax's momentum against him, with a technique specifically designed to counter Taurian physiology. Her hands found leverage points that exploited the rigid skeletal structure beneath his violet skin, and with a controlled redirection of force, she sent him stumbling past her up the stairs. Vex, seeing his leader faltered, darted forward with the lightning quickness characteristic of Proximans. His translucent limbs seemed to blur as he aimed a strike at Alara's midsection. She blocked the blow with a forearm technique Morin had taught her, specifically designed to disperse the impact of Proximan attacks, then countered with a precise strike to a nerve cluster, visible through his transparent skin. Vex collapsed, his systems temporarily overloaded by the targeted neural disruption. Krell, the most cautious of the three, hesitated at the base of the stairs, all four arms raised in a fighting stance as he assessed the unexpected resistance. His hesitation provided the opening Alara needed to reset her position, establishing firm footing on the staircase as she faced the remaining threat. "Stand down," she advised, her voice calm but commanding. "This doesn't need to escalate further." Krell's metallic scales rippled as he considered the situation. Then, with a growl of determination, he charged up the steps, using his multiple limbs to propel himself with unexpected speed. Alara had trained for this scenario with Morin, understanding that Uranians relied on overwhelming their opponents with simultaneous attacks from multiple limbs. The key was to target their center of balance rather than trying to counter each arm individually. As Krell reached her position, Alara dropped to a lower stance, ducked beneath the first sweeping arm, and executed a precise strike to the juncture where his torso met his lower body. The impact disrupted his equilibrium, sending him stumbling sideways into the staircase railing. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 15 seconds, but it had transformed the dynamic completely. Alara stood midway up the staircase, poised and uninjured, while her three attackers were variously disabled or disoriented. The atrium had fallen into stunned silence, hundreds of students witnessing the unexpected display of combat proficiency from the seemingly unremarkable human girl. Even the security drones had paused their patrol patterns, sensors trained on the confrontation. Jax, recovering his balance, turned to face Alara with newfound wariness. "What are you?" he demanded, his voice a mixture of anger and uncertainty. Before Alara could respond, a commanding voice cut through the tension. "That's quite enough." Principal Lisa Valen's tall, willowy frame parted the crowd as she approached the base of the staircase. As a Solarian, her luminous skin gave the impression she was lit from within, and her authoritative presence immediately commanded attention. "All of you, to my office, now." As the principal led the group away, Alara caught a glimpse of Leah watching from the edge of the crowd, her eyes cycling through colors too rapidly to interpret. Beside her stood Instructor Morin, whose slight nod conveyed both approval and concern. Principal Valen's office occupied the highest level of the administrative tower, its transparent walls offering a panoramic view of the surrounding star system. The four students stood before her desk, Jax, Vex, and Krell on one side, Alara isolated on the other. "I have reviewed the security footage," Valen began, her luminous features set in a severe expression. "This incident represents a serious breach of Academy protocols regarding physical confrontation. However, the footage also clearly shows who initiated the aggression." She turned her gaze to Jax. "Mr. Terrell, this appears to be the culmination of a pattern of behavior that has been brought to my attention through multiple channels. Your actions today, and apparently over the past several weeks, constitute bullying and physical assault." Jax straightened, falling back on his privileged position. "Principal Valen, I can explain." "I'm certain you can," Valen interrupted. "Your father's diplomatic status has afforded you considerable latitude in the past. That ends today." She gestured to a holographic display showing communication logs. The Interstellar Education Council has already been notified, as have your parents. Disciplinary measures will be determined by the full administrative board. Vex and Krell received similar reprimands, though with acknowledgement of their secondary roles in the harassment campaign. Finally, Valen turned to Alara. Ms. Cade, while you were clearly defending yourself, the nature of your response raises questions. Your enrollment records indicate standard civilian education and physical training. Yet you displayed combat techniques consistent with specialized military preparation. Alara maintained a neutral expression. My mother is a Marine commander. I've grown up on military bases. Indeed. Valen's luminous features revealed nothing of her thoughts. Commander Cade's service record is exemplary. However, it appears certain aspects of your background were minimized during the application process. The application asked for formal education and certifications. Alara replied carefully. I listed those accurately. Valen studied her for a long moment. Technically correct, though somewhat misleading by omission. She sighed, a sound like solar wind. The Academy values diversity of experience as well as species. Your military background is not problematic in itself, but concealing combat capabilities created an unsafe situation for yourself and others. With respect, Principal, Alara countered. Revealing those capabilities from the beginning would have made me a target for different reasons. I chose to observe and integrate before drawing attention. A flicker of something like amusement crossed Valen's features. A strategic approach, not unlike your mother's reputation for reconnaissance before engagement. She turned back to address all 4 students. This situation will require careful resolution. The Academy cannot tolerate harassment or violence, regardless of provocation or justification. The disciplinary measures were announced the following day. Jax received a 1-month suspension from all Academy activities, including his beloved Zero-G ball team, with mandatory counseling upon return. Vex and Krell received similar, but less severe restrictions. For Alara, the consequences were more complex. She was assigned to work with Instructor Morin to develop a peer support program addressing interspecies conflict resolution, effectively legitimizing her combat training while channeling it toward constructive purposes. Most surprisingly, Jax requested a private meeting with Alara before beginning his suspension. They met in a neutral conference room, supervised discreetly by Academy security. The Taurian appeared diminished without his usual entourage, his violet features drawn with what appeared to be genuine regret. I behaved dishonorably, he began, the formal phrasing suggesting his father's influence. My actions reflected poorly on my family, my species, and myself. Alara remained silent, assessing his sincerity. My father, Jax continued, reminded me that true military honor comes from protecting those with less strength, not dominating them. He hesitated. Though I now understand you never needed protection. Everyone needs allies, Alara replied carefully. Even the strongest. Jax considered this. My father opposed the Earth-Centauri alliance for strategic reasons. I adopted his political views without understanding their complexity. I transformed policy disagreement into personal prejudice. The admission seemed genuine, though Alara maintained her guard. And now, I still have much to learn about other species, about humans. His ridged brow furrowed. I would like to understand how a physically smaller species with lower gravitational adaptation developed such effective combat techniques. The request was unexpected, but not unwelcome. Adaptation through strategy rather than physical evolution, Alara explained. Humans learn to overcome biological limitations through tactical innovation. Would you be willing to demonstrate some of these techniques when I return from suspension? The question contained none of his previous arrogance. In a supervised training environment, of course. Alara considered the request carefully. Reconciliation through shared knowledge, she observed. That would be acceptable, under appropriate conditions. The agreement marked the beginning of a tentative truce. When Jax returned from suspension, he participated in Alara's newly established defense training program, initially as a student, but eventually as a co-instructor for Taurian-specific techniques. The program expanded rapidly, with students from various species volunteering to learn and teach defensive methods appropriate to their physiologies. Leah Torin joined as well, contributing valuable insights about empathic approaches to conflict de-escalation that complemented the physical techniques. Over the following months, Stellaris Academy implemented new policies addressing interspecies harassment, with Alara's program becoming a cornerstone of the initiative. Security protocols were enhanced, with particular attention to previously overlooked social dynamics in common areas, like the central staircase. Principal Valen, impressed by the program's success, arranged for Commander Cade to visit the Academy as a guest lecturer on Interstellar Alliance cooperation, a diplomatic gesture that also allowed Alara to reconnect with her mother after months of separation. "You've created something important here," Commander Cade told her daughter, as they observed a training session where Jax was demonstrating Taurian defensive stances to a mixed group of students. "Something that might have applications beyond an academic setting." Alara nodded, watching, as Leah guided a nervous Nebulan student through a confidence-building exercise. Integration through mutual respect and shared knowledge. "The foundation of any lasting alliance," her mother agreed. "I'm proud of you, not just for defending yourself, but for transforming conflict into cooperation." As the semester drew to a close, Alara stood once again at the observation deck, gazing out at the planetary rings. This time, she wasn't alone. Leah joined her at the transparent panel, her eyes shifting through pleasant shades of blue and green. "The new students arriving next semester will benefit from all you've built," the Centurion observed. "The training program, the policy changes, the cultural shift." "We built," Alara corrected. "It took all of us. But it started with you standing your ground on that staircase," Leah pointed out. "One moment of decision that changed everything." Alara considered this. "Not the decision to fight," she clarified. "The decision to stop hiding who I really was." Beyond the observation window, transport ships arrived carrying the next group of students, diverse species from across the Alliance, each bringing their own strengths, weaknesses, and potential contributions to the Academy community. "They'll still need guidance," Alara noted, already planning expansions to the training program. "The work isn't finished." "It never is," Leah agreed, her eyes shifting to a determined Violet. "But they'll have us to show them the way." As they turned to leave the observation deck, Alara glanced once more at the cosmic panorama beyond the station. Her mother had been right. The skills that had prepared her for combat had ultimately served a greater purpose. In defending herself, she had created an opportunity to defend others, transforming a personal victory into a collective advancement. The spiral staircase awaited, no longer a site of conflict, but a symbol of the Academy's evolution. As Alara descended its gravity-adjusted steps alongside her friend, she reflected that sometimes the most important battles weren't won through force, but through the courage to stand visibly in one's truth, a lesson as valuable in interstellar diplomacy as in the hallways of Stellaris Academy.